join us. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. While we get settled, please take a moment to participate in tonight's poll. I just launched it. Also, feel free to chat in any questions or comments you have for Alka. I will do my best to try and get to everyone's questions. It looks like some people have located the poll button, but if you're unfamiliar with the platform or not as familiar, they are located at the bottom of your screen. We are a global community, so please take a moment to share where you're logging in from. It's always fun to see where in not only the North America, but sometimes we do have some guests from other parts of the world, and that's always fun. The beauty of tonight's event is the ability to connect with people worldwide, including bringing our author and our wonderful members together in one virtual room. I want to give a warm welcome to the Walking Book Club members and especially our subscribers and any new friends that might be joining us for the first time. In case you're with us tonight for the first time, the Walking Book Club is a free virtual global community that moves while listening to audiobooks to engage the mind and the body. Heart and Soul book chats pair authors with humanitarian causes. If you can, we ask that you support these events by donating directly or through the Heart and Soul program, such as the Walking Book Club e-magazine. Proceeds from the Walking Book Club e-magazine are donated to a charity that supports women, children, or the environment. Tonight's beneficiary is Room to Read, an organization working towards global equality in education. I'd like to say this makes the Walking Book Club good for mind, body, heart, and soul. And also I want to add some new information that our Room to Read representative passed on earlier today, is that there is a matching going on because today is World Refugee Day, and they have a generous donor who will match up to $25,000. So we made a donation as an organization today that was tripled. So a donation of $600 went to Room to Read today. If you haven't supported it directly, please feel free to donate directly. And if you can do it by tonight, your donation is tripled. Okay, so now without further ado, let's welcome tonight's special guest, Alka Joshi. Alka is the international best-selling author of the Jaipur trilogy, The Henna Artist, The Secret Keeper, and The Perfumist of Paris. Her debut novel, The Henna Artist, immediately became a best-selling novel and a Reese Witherspoon pick. The Henna Artist is in development for a Netflix series, which we'll talk about in a bit. Alka is one of the Walking Book Club's favorite authors, and we're thrilled that she's joining us for a second Heart and Book chat tonight. From mixing henna to mixing fragrance to the literary travels through Jaipur, Shimla, and Paris, Alka's books are rich with detail, character development, and storyline. Welcome, Alka.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and hello, everybody.
Well, let's get right into the chat because these tend to go fast, and I often don't get to ask or chat about everything that is on my wish list to discuss. I hope everybody had a chance to take a peek at the poll. And I've asked myself, Alka, which is my favorite of the three? And just like my children, I couldn't pick one. But I love the way that you weaved perfume and art. Can you tell us or share with us about the evolution of this aspect of the perfumist?
When I was writing The Henna Artist all those years ago, I knew what was going to happen to the future of all three main characters. And, I knew that Lakshmi would marry Dr. Kumar. I knew that Malik would go to the Himalayas and meet this nomadic woman whom he would end up with. And then I knew that Radha would end up in Paris and work in the perfume industry. So for me, it was then flushing out, how does she get into the perfume industry? Why is she interested in it. And as you said, Julie, the idea is that she is so good at mixing different materials in order to get the desired result. In fact, even get a better result than Lakshmi could have with the henna paste. And now with the perfume, she's doing the same thing. She's impressing her boss, Delphine, by calling out when the ingredients are not working well together. So she has a knack for it. And part of why she has a knack for it is because she grew up in India. And when you grow up in India, you have your access to a variety of different scents from the moment you are born is amazing. From the moment you're born, you can smell the curry that's cooking in the house. You can smell all the different parts of the garam masala and the turmeric and the cumin. You can also smell the flowers that are in the room and in the garden, because like something like tuberose is very fragrant. Jasmine in India is very fragrant. It's not like jasmine here. It's very different. And it has a lot of different layers of fragrance. And then, of course, Radha grows up and she is on the streets and she's smelling the ox cart and she's smelling the diesel fuel and she's smelling the cooking fires. And so, scents don't have to be all pleasant. They can also be just a sense of environment. And she knows how to mingle all of these scents together to make it a fabulous fragrance. So that was the genesis of how she started, how I really developed the whole idea of perfume in The Perfumist of Paris as it relates to Radha.
I loved learning more about the perfume industry and layering of the notes and what is a perfume and what is just the different levels. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we do in the Walking Book Club is audio book extras, and they're included in the e-magazine. And I adore going down each one of those rabbit holes of, this is the scent that she's talking about, and these are the kilns. So I'm sure you did all of that, but when I read, I go, oh, that's interesting, and then I will add that to our audiobook extras, and I adored learning more about that. The other thing that I thought was brilliant was how you weaved art and signature scents together. Can you share with us a little bit more about that?
Isn't that interesting? So my first degree, my bachelor's is in art history. And I have studied art for a long time. I have gone to different countries to look at art in various periods of life. And I used to draw a lot and paint. And it is wonderful to be able to combine my writing with my art. And I didn't quite know how it would happen in The Perfumist of Paris, but I thought, I don't really know how this came about, but in 1974, I went to Europe for the first time. I was 16. I went with my parents. They kind of did a little European tour with me. And I remember going to the Jeu de Paume Museum, and I remember looking at the Impressionists, and they made such an impression on me. And one of the paintings there was Manet's Olympia. And so I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if people started creating perfumes for these women who are always in these paintings and yet they've been forgotten? Like, who knows who the woman in Manet's paintings are? Who knows who are the women in Degas' paintings or Cézanne's? And then, of course, there are the Tahitian women in Gauguin's paintings that we know nothing about. So I thought, why are the women forgotten and the artists and the paintings always remembered? I think that the subject matter often has to do with how inspired you are to actually create the art. And sure enough, I go down this rabbit hole, as you were saying, I went down this rabbit hole to figure out what Victorine was all about. And Victorine is the subject of Manet's painting Olympia. And as I found out, I was kind of shocked to learn that, she was very poor, but she always wanted to paint. And the only way that she could do that was to become a model for all these different painters. A lot of the Impressionist painters used her because she was an excellent model. And she then would use that money to go buy paint and to do her own paintings. In fact, she was admitted to the Paris Salon before Manet was.
Mm.
And, she was obviously a very good painter. She, however, never got the notoriety that Manet did. Number one, because he's a guy. And number two, because he had a lot of money. He was born with money, like a lot of the Impressionist painters were. And so, like Monet and like Degas, they had money, so they could spend all day long painting. And I just thought that was so unfair. So I wanted to bring this woman to light and all the other women in the paintings that are often ignored. And what would their scent be like? What would they smell like? What would a fragrance around them be like? So that's kind of how the artwork started, mixing in my brain with the perfumery. And I thought, what if somebody commissions Radha, or commissions the House of Eve to do a painting around these women, to do a fragrance around these paintings. So that's how that got started. And then I love the idea. Like, I think that there is one of these fragrance companies that should take the idea of Remember Me,
Mhm.
from the book, and develop a set of fragrances that, highlight these women in the paintings.
I thought it was brilliant. I think, although like I said, I don't want to name a favorite. I did that aspect. I just thought, I don't know, maybe it's a personal interest, but the art and the perfume and the history, and the like the history of that painting and this woman, that it was brilliant, and I loved it. And so the results of the poll, it was too hard to choose one at 62%, and then the henna artist and the perfumist are tied, and then the secret keeper has some. So it is very hard to choose. So it's fun to thank you for everybody who participated. It was fun to see what you all think. Okay, so I have kind of a two-part question for you. And the first part has to do with concluding the series. When you got to the end of the writing of the trilogy, what were your thoughts or your emotions to be at the end of this journey?
Uh, Honestly, I had never thought about coming to the end, but I knew that for the moment, I wanted to move on with something else. In fact, when I finished The Henna Artist, I had started work on the fourth novel, which I'm working on now. And but Malik had been so insistent that I write his story, and I had so much of it already worked out that didn't make it into The Henna Artist, that I said, okay, all right, so I'm going to write The Secret Keeper of Jaipur next about Malik. And then after I was done with that, I thought, well, now I've got one character left who doesn't have her own book, and that's Radha, and I know what's going to happen to her, and it would be interesting to find out how she becomes a perfumist and what she's doing with her life in Paris. So then I wrote book number 3. Now I'm going back to what I had started, years ago. And that is a book taking place in 1937. And it is a story about a nurse who is working in Bombay. She is assigned a very famous painter to take care of, and the painter is a female. Once again, I'm going to combine painting with the story. And this female painter is modeled after a real painter who lived during the 20s, 30s, and 40s. In fact, she died in 41. She was half Indian and half Hungarian. Really interesting combination. Very interesting woman, very iconoclastic, did not conform to society's expectations of women, but was really an amazing artist in her own right. She studied in Paris, she studied in Florence. And so I decided that the nurse, when she loses her job because the painter dies, the nurse is going to go traveling through all of the different cities that the painter used to live in or worked in, and try to see what might have happened to her. How did she happen to die? And how did she get sick in the first place? So that's going to be that next book. And because in my mind, I already had moved on to that book, I'm not missing my characters. In fact, I think the characters of the trilogy are always going to live with me. They cannot ever be taken away, right? Like I live with them, I know who they are, I know what they're doing, and I may go back to
Okay.
the characters in another book,
Okay.
which would be really fun. In fact, Julie, a lot of people tell me, why don't you write a book about this next generation of Nikki and Radha's daughters, and then
Mm.
Malik's kids also. And
Mhm.
who knows, I may end up doing something like that. Another suggestion was, why don't I write a whole story about the courtesans of Agra, who really are fascinating. And
Mm.
I love doing the research on them, because they really are, women unto themselves. There's nobody like them. So, who knows? I may do something like that later. But for right now, I have this other book that I'm working on.
So it sounds like even though you were done with it, you were already engaged in something else. But and you've actually answered kind of another question already, that maybe they might return.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I think there's every possibility that they will, because it's not like when I wrote The Perfumist of Paris that I just said, no, I'm tired of these characters. I'm never tired of them. I think that they are endlessly fascinating, and they are always doing things that surprise me.
Well, as a reader or a listener to the books, and the stories taking place over decades, you become invested in them, and you're like, okay, well, what's Rada up to? What are her kids up to? How is she doing in her profession? So they're more than just a character that you close the book.
Yeah.
I wonder, as you said, that people have inquired about taking the story in this direction and the others. So it's good to know that door is not closed completely.
Right.
Because
Right.
kind of the second part of the question was, your books are in production, not they're being adapted, or are they in production? Can you bring us up to date for that?
So the henna artist option was bought and then renewed. They are looking at a 6 to 8 episode series. And so the production company that bought it was a combination of Miramax TV, Frida Pinto's Productions, because Frida wants to play Lakshmi, and then Michael Edelstein. So the three of them got together, bought the option. Then they went to Netflix and said, "Hey, we need now the money to actually produce this thing. We have the book in our hands." So that has been in development at Netflix. And I'm really excited about Frida playing Lakshmi, because if you meet her, she is very much like Lakshmi. She's very calm. She's very centered. She is reserved, but she also is very kind. And she has that whole thing locked in. She has Lakshmi's personality locked in, which is cool.
Mhm. Um, the reason I wanted to kind of catch up on that is I when I was saying, oh, this is done, I thought, well, maybe Netflix not only will do the henna artist, they'll take this all the way through, and then they'll take the characters forward, and we won't have to say we're done, and then it'll just keep going, and you'll have a 4, 5, 6 season series. So
That would be lovely. I'm sure that, everybody's looking forward to having something like that where we can go on season after season.
yeah, that
Yeah.
would be fun. So speaking of that, are there any other characters that you would match with an actress or an actor that we would know? And chime in, everybody, if you have some opinions, please chat them in. I'd love to see, who would you cast as Nimi or Malik or Radha, or who would you cast? So feel free to chat that in. It'll be fun. Anyway, so do you, Alka, have any actresses or actors in mind that you?
Well, I think for Radha, I was thinking about Aliyah Bhatt, and I don't know if the American audience is aware of her, but she's a very good actress, and I think she would make an amazing Radha. Um, and I think that she could play well off of Frida Pinto. So that is about it as far as that goes. I had an actor in mind for Dr. Kumar, but unfortunately he died. So very young. Um, So I think other than that, I don't have any names that I think the American audience would be familiar with.
Oh, and I don't think anybody has chatted anything in. I'd love to see, we did this with another book that was picked up for production, and it was fun to see who people thought of for the different roles. I wanted to go back a little bit, if I could, to people who are new to us or maybe are just meeting you for the first time. Your evolution as a writer is quite interesting. And now you've got 3 books. But if you could share with us and others, you talked about it in our last one, but I think it's very interesting and others might be interested. Can you share, your evolution of writing and how it feels to be where you are now?
Yeah. So, I never thought that I would become a writer, a full-time author of fiction. I had spent about 25 to 30 years in the marketing and advertising industry. The last 12 years of it, or 13 years, I don't know, I can't remember now. I'm old, so I don't remember things as well. But the last bit was in my own agency, and working on that. So I was, I think, writing tiny little stories, and I didn't even realize I was doing that. For so many years, I was writing commercials, TV commercials, radio commercials, and print ads that really were telling a story. What I didn't realize is that a story always has a beginning, middle, and an end. It has characters, it has dialogue. And I was naturally, over all of those years, just producing so many stories all the time. And when I started writing, which was at the encouragement of my husband, who said, you really could become an author. And I would say, no, 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 I'm just a hack. And he said, you make stories up all the time. You really need to start writing them down, especially stories about India, which, he's not Indian. And so he had never heard these stories before. He didn't know anything about, Indian customs, Indian food, the henna, all the flowers and things that we have. And so I started writing, and first I started with an evening class, and my teacher was really encouraging. The recession was upon us in 2008, that global economic crisis. And so my clients at that time had said, whoa, we got to stop the projects that we have right now. We need to either cancel them or put them on hold because we don't know what's happening. I don't know if you remember, multiple layoffs, layoffs right and left were happening. So I thought, okay, well, maybe to keep myself busy for the next 2 years, I need to sign up for one of the MFA programs in creative writing and actually take this seriously. Maybe in 2 years, I could finish a book. Well, in 2 years, I did have an opportunity to do the sort of the initial drafts of the henna artist, and it became my thesis for my master's. Then, my mother, who had been my inspiration for Lakshmi, she died suddenly. So I didn't write for 1 year. I just, couldn't handle working on the henna artist. And then my mentor from the program called and she said, what's happening? I said, nothing. And she said, look, let's work on it a little bit. So we worked on it together. For another year, and then she sent it off to her agent, and that was a sort of shining moment for me because her agent called me and said, I love this book. I love the character of Lakshmi. This is a very strong voice. And so I said, oh, good. So I'm going to get published. And look, I didn't even have to spend that many years doing it. She said, no, you're nowhere close to being published. What you have is a strong voice. That's it. That's what I'm saying. Lakshmi's voice is going to carry this book, but you still have a lot of elements missing to make that happen. So then for the next 8 years, we were working on making the book stronger. Sometimes I would take 3 months off because I was so frustrated. Sometimes I would take 6 months off. Sometimes, one time I even just took a whole year off thinking that, this was never going to happen. And why am I even putting any energy into it? Then finally, it does happen. And my agent calls me and she goes, okay, so we have a deal. And, HarperCollins, there's a imprint within HarperCollins and they're looking for historical fiction. And yours is exactly what they're looking for, something unusual, something nobody's writing about, which is just real people in the 1950s in India. This has nothing about war, nothing about partition, nothing about poverty. It's just people living their lives, many stratas of society living their lives. So that's why they bought the book. And then I remember, Julie, the first time that I went to HarperCollins, they invited me to come out to New York, and they invited me to come out to Toronto. And this is way before the Reese Witherspoon thing happened. So the book had gone off to print, and all they had, they had covers for the book. And so I go out there, and I step into the lobby is filled with my book covers, like everywhere. It was amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is so nice. I can't believe they have tons of authors. I can't believe they would do this. And then they did a champagne toast on the 42nd floor in Toronto. They had me do videos and different, journalists talking to me. And they had a cake, in the shape of the henna artist's book cover and so on. And then when they were putting me back on the plane, I said to my handler, Randy, I said, you guys are so nice. Thank you so much for doing that for me. He said, Alka, we don't do this for everybody. We're doing this for you because we know the henna artist is going to be a big book. And I think that was the moment that I realized, oh my God, they are putting a lot of energy behind this book. And so, I sometimes I think I just got really lucky. I got lucky because I had a wonderful mentor who sent the book off to her agent. I got lucky that her agent liked the book. She has been to India. She loves Jaipur. So she got it, right? And then I got really lucky because the editor who bought it within HarperCollins has been to India also and loves India. So I think just all along the way, I got lucky.
Well, there's a saying that I use with my clients in coaching, that if you are on the right path, the universe will align to support you.
Wow.
So, I hear you, but I also think there's tremendous respect that you should savor in the grit that you showed not to give up on this project or take a pause. And it's that that squiggle line that people say, your path from here to there is not like this, it's like this.
Right.
And it's always inspiring to hear stories like that kind of say, hey, wait a minute, it might not be easy, but if it's part of who you are and what you need to get out into the universe, don't give up so easily. So thank you again
Yeah.
for sharing that. I think you added a few new details for me. That was
I think that when you're passionate about a subject that you're writing about, it will not let you go. It's not just, you are going to persevere, but that there is something about this particular book, The Henna Artist, that would not leave me. Right. I constantly thought about it. I constantly thought about Lakshmi, and Lakshmi looks just like my mother. So I was imagining my mother in all of these different moments.
To our guests tonight, if you don't follow Alka on the social media channels, especially on Instagram, it's really fun to keep up with her travels and her adventures. And you can actually, she drops in some snippets about the new book, but she's also, you can see pictures of your mom. You often post pictures of your mom on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew you were in Prague. I didn't know quite why, but you were in Prague. And that was for your research.
Exactly. So in the fourth book, the painter who is modeled after the real painter who was half Indian, half Hungarian, I thought, well, I don't want to have her be exactly that person. So what can I change about her? I changed her age, and then I changed the fact that she's, instead of half Hungarian, she's half Czechoslovakian. So that's why I went to Prague. So my book is going to take us from Prague to Paris to Florence and then back to India again.
Oh, that's right. I did see you were in Florence too.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, she must be researching something good.
Yeah. And I met with academicians and archivists and art history buffs ahead of time. I had scheduled all of this. So when I went, I got a chance to really get into the history of 1937, which is when the fourth book is taking place, the history of what was happening in that city in 1937.
One of the posts that you said you were making croissants, was that part of the book?
No, no, that one was just for fun.
But okay, I was like, oh, there's going to be some baking in this next one.
I love croissants, and it's so rare to find a great croissant in the United States. So I thought I'm going to take this class. And okay, so there's a couple of things I learned. One is that our butter in the United States doesn't have as much fat as the French butter. So the French use a butter for cooking, for their toast, whatever it is that they're doing for the croissant. Their butter is so much higher in fat, which is why their croissants come out so flaky and fabulous, and why their pastries taste so good. It's a little bit of a slippery slope, if you get addicted to French butter. But you can buy it at Trader Joe's now.
Oh, French butter, everybody take note. Now, have you made any croissants now that you're back in the States?
No, no. I mean, I am so busy. I don't have time to really cook. In fact, so today all I made pasta, and then I had sauteed some um, zucchini and in some cumin and onions and garlic. And then I poured a little bit of coconut milk on that. And I added just a little truffle paste that I had bought in Florence, and poured that over the pasta. It was delicious, but that's about as complicated as I can get right now.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. You had mentioned that, the characters are always with you, or, does one character come with you more than others? Is one that speaks to you or says, hey, here's an update, more than others?
I think it actually depends on whatever book I'm working on. So when I was doing the henna artist, it was always Lakshmi who was coming to me, and then when I did the Secret Keeper of Jaipur, it was always Malik, whom I could see and hear, and then now it's Radha. But more than also sometimes more than Radha, it's actually Florence, her mother-in-law, that
Mm.
comes to me, because I was so surprised by her. I was surprised that she turned out to be the person she turned out to actually be in The Perfumist, and that the relationship with Radha grew and developed and changed. Um, and I think that Florence is an endlessly interesting, fascinating person. Um, somebody who really wanted a close relationship with her son and didn't get to have that. So now she can have a very close relationship with her daughter-in-law, which I think would have been the last thing that
Mm.
she would have anticipated.
One of the which that was kind of an aspect that came together in the end, that was like, oh, that's kind of a nice happy ending in a way. One of the ones that really surprised me is how you brought Radha's nemesis back into
Oh
it.
my gosh, yes.
I love that.
Yes. And she just showed up. I knew that the person who had commissioned the fragrance for Olympia was going to show up at the hotel. I had no idea it was going to be Sheila.
I see. Now
All
that was one of my questions for you. Like, was there an aspect of the book that kind of surprised you? So
oh,
was this one of them?
so many aspects, but that one definitely. Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be Sheila. I could see her. And then I thought, who is this woman? And I thought, oh my God, that's Sheila all grown up. I can still see exactly how she was dressed when she came to the Hotel Bristol. Okay, now I have to tell you that so Michael Edelstein, the producer of the henna artist, he has just been extremely generous with his time and everything. Every time I go to LA, we have lunch. And he's the one who first told me about the Hotel Bristol in Paris. He said, Alka, the next time you're in Paris, you have to go to the Hotel Bristol. So one day I did, and I invited one of the master perfumers whom I was talking to for the perfumist background. I invited her to have tea with me at the Hotel Bristol. And then after we had had tea, then I walked around the hotel and I imagined what Radha was doing, where she was sitting, where Delphine was, where the client was coming in. So that was my sort of inspiration for that scene
Mhm.
with Sheila. And the other thing that he introduced me to was this world of perfume, because I told him I'm going to write this book about the perfumist. And he said, "Oh, you have to talk to my friend Anne Gottlieb." So I go
Mhm.
talk to Anne in New York City. And
Mhm.
then she tells me so much. She's so generous with her time and energy. She tells me a lot about the fragrances that she has been behind, like J'adore and CK1 and Eternity. She works a lot for the Dior and the CK people. And then she introduced me to master perfumers in New York City. So I hang out there, I talk to them. She takes me into a perfume lab. Then I understand how Radha works in her lab. And then those perfumers in New York City said, "You've got to go to Paris." So then I flew to Paris. This is like 2 years ago.
Mhm.
So I flew to Paris and I talked to the master perfumers there. And then they said, "You should actually go to Grasse in the southeastern part of France, because that's where perfume is compounded and that's where it's bottled. And so you need to understand that part of it." So I went down there and talked to all of those people. That was fabulous. And then they said, "You've got to fly to Lisbon and talk to a couple more perfumers." So I did that. So Michael has been really helpful to me in getting started with some of the major components of the perfumist from Paris,
Mhm.
even though he's not even working on this book, he's working on the henna artist.
Well, there was kind of an aha moment when you were writing about the perfume industry and, the high notes, the middle notes, and the base. We, in one of our travels, there's a scent that this chain of hotels has. It's, and I can't duplicate. I'm trying to duplicate it and I'm trying to find it. And uh, it just shows the complexity of, um, and the, it's not just, oh, let's put this together and this together and this together. It's such a distinctive scent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and in reading in your book, there was, uh, I was educated on the process.
Yeah. Even when you blend a bunch of scents together, you don't know what's going to show up as a top note, heart note, or a base note. So the base note of a perfume is always the heaviest molecules. Like sandalwood is a very heavy molecule, and that will stay for 24 hours. So you want really heavy notes on the bottom. And then the second layer is the heart note. So that is the essence really of that perfume. So maybe it's jasmine is the essence of that perfume, or it's a warm day in spring. That turns out to be your heart note. That's where you want people to get it. The top note is the note that you only smell for the first 15 minutes. And that is like when you go to a perfume counter at any department store and you splash some of that perfume on, for the first 15 minutes, that is what you're going to smell. And then, but wait, so don't buy the perfume based on that.
Mhm.
Wait until you have had it on for about 4 to 6 hours and then smell it. That's going to be the one that you're going to smell most often.
Hmm. Just added a little bit more information. Thank you.
And also, I think, Julie, that I realized as I was learning about perfume that that's actually the way we writers write. So for our base note is always who is the main character and what do they want from their life and why do they want it? That is a key thread that has to run out throughout your story. The middle notes are all the other characters who are either helping or hurting the main character get what they want. And then I think the top notes are all the things that make the story richer, which is understanding what the story is and what the setting is, explaining the setting, explaining the smells, the sounds,
Mm.
the flavors, everything else that really makes the whole story so complete.
Well, as I said in the beginning, the way you weave this all together, you have a beautiful signature writing style, signature scent. So let me ask you this, and in your travels and in your research on this and what you just shared about heart notes, top notes, what's in your signature scent?
Um, I love sandalwood. I have always just loved sandalwood. I could just take pure sandalwood oil and dab it and just be comfortable with that. Because, as a kid in India, I just smelled sandalwood everywhere. It was in the little carvings that my parents had in our home. It was in the temples. Anytime you pass a temple, you will get a really strong whiff of sandalwood, not in a bad way, but in a very calming sort of way. Um, and it's also a part of most women's powders that they put on,
Yeah.
on their body or, in their hair.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll put just sandalwood powder in my hair and put a comb through it. It's just such a calming scent.
Okay. One more kind of quick question for you. If you could take one of your characters to lunch,
Uh-huh.
which one would you take and where would you go?
Ooh, this is a really good one. This is a really good question. I love it. Um, well, I think that uh, always I would take Lakshmi to lunch. Always. I would take Lakshmi to lunch. And I don't think I would take her to any place fancy. I think I would arrange for a picnic so that we can, go to a park and we can sit on a bench and just talk for hours about, why she is the way that she is and what matters to her and who are the people she's met in her life who have made a difference and why. So I think definitely I would choose Lakshmi. Another person that I would choose, and I would have to go to the Hotel Bristol to uh, invite her, is the older Maharani. I love her. I just love the older Maharani because she's so funky.
Mhm.
She's got such a unique way of going through life and getting things done. And I loved her in The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. I'm so sorry that she was dying, but I loved her in that, she's wise enough to make things happen that need to, happen.
Mhm.
But I would have to take her definitely to the Hotel Bristol and have high tea with her.
Oh, I love that. And especially adding on that, not only Lakshmi, but that you go to the Hotel Bristol as well. Um, Finally, as we come to the last minute here, do you have like a, a release date, or when can we be on alert for the painter?
So I don't have an actual date. It all depends. When we write a book and we deliver the final draft, it all gets scheduled in with all the other books that are in the development queue. So one of them might be close to being printed, another one might just be, just have the cover done, but nothing else has been done. So they'll put me in a queue, and I'm assuming that it'll be somewhere around the late 2024 time period.
I love your covers, by the way.
Yeah, I know
I
that.
love your
I think
covers.
HarperCollins does such a great job on the covers.
Mhm.
I have nothing to do with the covers and I have nothing to do with the titles. HarperCollins people do all of that, and I'm grateful to them because all I need to do is write. But for example, they've already named my fourth book. They're calling it The Painter. It's not, I mean, it's not something I have even thought about. That's what they're calling it for now.
Mhm. Well, I want to thank you with so much gratitude for joining us this evening. Again, to our members and our guests here tonight, this is a Heart and Soul book chat. The Walking Book Club holds heart and soul events, book chats, and workshops, and they benefit a charity that is aligned with our vision to help women, children, and the environment globally. So if you need to check us out, please check us out online. And finally, Alka, how can people connect with you?
You can always find me on Instagram at the Alka Joshi. We had to do that because there's another Alka Joshi who's a bus driver and does not, do any writing. So
Oh,
now I'm the Alka Joshi. Um, And then you can always, if you have a book club and you want me to, or you have an alumni association or a library that you want me to speak at, you can always contact me, alka@alkajoshi.com. Easy.
You've
Um,
always
and,
been so
and by the way,
generous
does
with your
anybody
time.
have any questions?
I've been looking. There's some comments here.
Does anybody want to ask a question? I'm happy to answer. It's always intimidating to ask like on a Zoom because you don't
And
know where
yeah, and
everybody is.
if you can't take yourself off mute, just let me know and I'll do it from my end. You are always very generous with your time, Alka, and we are grateful that you could join us this evening. Oh, wait, Nicole has Nicole has a question.
Yay.
And Nicole is our she is our room to read connection.
Oh, okay.
Nicole, I just I think you have to take yourself off mute.
Oh, hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, hi. Sorry, I'm in the car and running around crazy, but so love. I had to jump off, but I love all the books and everything. So I put it in the chat. But why was Coco Chanel's fragrance so over the top, exclusive and popular and timeless and all that? What made her scent so amazing? I was just curious.
So first of all, Chanel is one of the few houses that maintains their own lab. Almost everybody else farms out their process of developing a perfume to one of the three major labs in the world. So there's three major labs that do most of the perfume. They develop most of the perfume for everybody, like Dior, like Lagerfeld. They don't have their own labs. But Coco Chanel is the only one who said, I'm going to have my own lab and nobody else gets to touch our formula. And then the second thing is that her perfumer developed a molecule. This is kind of getting in the weeds, but there's a molecule they developed that nobody else knows the formula to. It's very proprietary. And the molecule is a combination of a bunch of different fragrances. It's always the same molecule that goes into all the Chanel fragrances. And because nobody else has access to it and can't get to it, their perfume is just exclusive. It just smells like nobody else's.
That was a great question, Nicole. Thank you.
Yeah. There is a new commercial that I keep seeing now online, and it is Bleu de Chanel. It's for a men's fragrance. And I don't even know if they had men's fragrances before this time, but yeah, there's a beautiful young boy who is sort of headlining that particular commercial. And I just wondered, has anybody bought it for a friend, or have you smelled it yet? I'd be very curious to know what it smells like.
Anyone? I haven't seen that. I'll have to keep my eye out for it. Well, now it's piqued my interest. I'm gonna Google it. And I did not know that about the molecule. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for the question again, Nicole. When is the henna artist movie coming out?
Well, we don't know. I don't have a hard and fast date on that. Hey, but I did want to tell you that every fragrance has about 100 to 120 ingredients in it. It's hard to isolate exactly what's in there, but yeah, there's a lot of ingredients in every vial of perfume that you do. One of the cool things that I got to do is I collaborated with this group called Lila Nur, and I don't make any money off of this or anything, but I just thought that since they were developing fragrances that are using raw ingredients from India, which is where most of the fragrances for perfumes initially came from the Indian subcontinent. So I collaborated with them and they created a very special packaging just for my book tour. So every time I would go to a different place with a book tour, they would provide 20 of these for free for people who bought The Perfumist of Paris. And if you want to smell any of these, they are really wonderful. This kit actually costs about $35 and it's would make a great present if you wanted to, but it's Leela Nur. Here, I'll put it in here.
Lisa just shared, it's Timothy Chalamet.
Yes, that's the guy from
Yes.
the Bleu de Chanel. So it's leelanur.com, and you might find something there that you really like, and it would be a very Indian sort of based fragrance.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, especially to you, Alka. We appreciate your time and sharing more insight into your writing process, your characters. It really has been a pleasure. And I hope you'll come back for The Painter.
I will. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Good night.